Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's there. Just get this working. Right. I'm Stephen Parker. I'm the UK Business Development Manager for Airflow Developments. We are a UK business, and basically today's presentation was done prior to some questions being posed, but basically it's about compliant ventilation and doing it properly, and that's really where the passion of Airflow is generated from. You mentioned Alan, my boss. We are exceptionally passionate about doing things correctly and in alliance with UK regulation. Alan actually drives an awful lot of the UK regulations. We advise government, we advise BRE, we advise BEMA and other associations. As a business, we've been around a long time. 1955 we were founded in High Wycombe in a garage by a gentleman called Connor Wilson. He worked in the furniture industry in and around High Wycombe, which you may or may not be aware was the, well, they'd say centre of excellence for the empire for furniture back in the day. And Connor realised the state of the air within the factories that he was working in and managing. And it was atrocious with all the dust and everything else that was being created. So he developed methodologies for measuring and then the extraction of this awful quality air in the factories in and around High Wycombe. And from that, Airflow developed. We're now UK based. We do have operations in Germany and the Czech Republic. Basically looking after Eastern and Western Europe accordingly. We have production. We try and localise it to its key markets. So product like UnoHab, which we have on display, is German manufactured because Germany gets ventilation, get MVHR far better than we do in the UK today. We use a Finnish factory for our adroit units simply because, again, it is the centre of excellence. It's where they make the best. It's not about being the cheapest, it's about being the best system on the market. Environmentally, IS 14001, we were one of the first companies in the country to actually get this. We were certainly in the first 100. Our claim is about 87th. So we've been right at the forefront of the environmental push within the UK. I know we'll get to time, so I won't go through them all, but in our offices we're adopting all the time new technologies, reactive lighting, so that when nobody's in the office, the lights turn off. Same with the heating. Of course, as you would imagine, we have MVHR. We have air pumps around the site, so providing the heat for in the winter times. We're on a bus route, makes it simpler for the staff to get in. We do have a car park, but we're encouraging everybody to go electric on their cars. In fact, I'm the first of the guinea pigs. And I got here yesterday on one charge. So so far it's working. But we're trying all the time to push the envelope. But actually on our existing site, we talk about embedded carbon. We've been there since 1960. And it is better and to use what we've got, to develop what we've got, than to bulldoze it, throw away all the carbon that was in there and build a new site. We've got the space. In fact, we've probably got more space now, but we are on the acquisition front. I mentioned that our manufacturing is done in Europe, but we manufacture where the market is. At the UK, it's fans, basically, for ventilation, but it is moving, and we've acknowledged that. I'm working with a number of the national house builders, and they realise for their future product, they're going to have to go down the route of MVHR, if not embracing Passive House, certainly in Scotland in the very near future. So we're looking to centralise some production of MVHR in the UK as soon as the site becomes available. We're probably going on the acquisitional front of a weaker competitor as the way we'll go forward with that. Touching on the other environmentals within the product, we recycle our waste, we use fans that are fully recyclable. Everything we do is to try and conserve energy. We're members of the WE agreement, so obviously anything can be recycled back to us. And we're also working on the golden thread philosophy so that we can actually monitor a product from its inception, from one fan came from, all the way through to it being in your house. It's not Big Brother, it's just if you wanted to find out something about that fan, we can actually follow it back through the supply chain. And we're working with the supply chain on that. It's meant quite a large investment for Airflow because we've actually had to take away all our operating systems and put in new ones. We've gone to a SAP system, but that gives us far better traceability of our product, the raw materials, etc. going through the company. I'll go through very quickly. I mean, passive house, I'm sure you've all accept the reasons why we need to ventilate properly. I'll just flash through these quickly because I know we're against time. But basically, everything we're doing is making our houses more efficient, making them more suitable for heating, but we're taking them and putting them in a plastic bag or wrapping them in a bubble. We need to breathe. We breathe. And that's really one of the passions we have at Airflow, is getting people to understand the importance of air. You can't see it. I spent quite a lot of my career in plumbing industry. And of course, if you get a water leak, you can see it. But if you've not got decent air, you can't really see it. We did some work recently with Rochdale Borough-wide housing, just up the road. And as you're probably aware, they have had one or two issues in relation to a problem with a child dying. But when we've put sensors into a property to actually first identify what their issues were, the family were practically living in a soup of pollution. The humidity levels never dropped below 80%. The carbon dioxide, which is the monitor for gases in air, which we use, in fact, was peaking at over 5,000 parts per million. It shouldn't even get to 1,000. But that was the state that these people were living in, and some people still are. So again, just going very quickly through it, ventilation is all about improving the air quality inside the house. These are very important documents, certainly for us Brits, or English and Welsh. Scotland has their own, but the only difference is on their Part F. Basically, they include for a drying air room, which we don't consider necessary in England and Wales, but these are our Bible. This is law. Whatever you say, and the people who may disagree with me, that what's in there isn't right, but that is law. That is what law says in terms of ventilation you should now do. Retrofit. Anytime you touch a fan, like with Corgi and gas, you've now got to check the ventilation system is compliant with Part F of the building regs. You have to get it, measure it. You can't just hold a piece of toilet paper up now and check the fan is holding it and think that works. You've got to know what the flow rate is, because the flow rate is what's important. It's getting the dirty air out of the house. Part L is about energy conservation, because obviously we don't want to be doing this and having fans running at full pelt all the time. And Part O, which is another important part, and that actually came in for the first time in June last year, and it's to do about overheating within a property, because we are getting concerned as we get properties being tighter, particularly to passive house standard. Part O, houses are getting too warm for people. There's 4 basic systems in Part F. The first 3, natural ventilation, continuous, and decentralized continuous, they all waste energy. They take all the energy that you've built up in the property and put it in the garden 4 or 5 times a day. So all that energy you've built up, that you've paid for to be heated, gets thrown out. Mechanical ventilation with heat recovery is the Rolls-Royce standard, because what we do is return that heat energy back into the property. Those are the only 4 approved systems. It does actually say you can do whatever you like, and you can, but you have then got to convince building control that what you've done complies with that. And building control is really getting stepped up. In the last few months, building control, as you possibly are aware, is being separated from local authorities. It's being brought out into an own body, an own quango of its own, and they're advertising in the Police Gazette for inspectors so that people will investigate it. No more will it be the building control officer turning up while you're having an extension done. Oh, yeah, it's doing all right, looks all right. Who's your carpenter? Oh, it's Joe. Oh, yeah, no, Joe, he's a good lad, I have a pint with him. That's gone. You have now got to make sure that you're adhering to these and prove to the guy that you're actually doing it properly. The whole thing is being tightened up because, quite frankly, it was a mess. Grenfell was the calling card. That's when it all changed. That's why we've had to create the golden thread so we can actually show the product's process through. We could say it's because we're nice people, but actually it's because that's the direction of travel in law. Benefits of heat recovery. Saves money basically, because instead of throwing that energy out into the garden, you're retaining the vast majority of it, a good quality MVHR unit, 90% efficient, even a poor one, and it has to be at least 73% efficient to comply with Part O of the building regs. But they will save you money, and they'll save your householder money. The tighter the property, the more efficient the unit will work because of the less leakage. It's a whole house sealed unit. That's the ideal scenario. And of course, it has to comply with building regs. Again, I'll show you how, if you wanted to have a look, we've got a little unit over there. It's not one that would go into a house unless it was a doll's house. It's just a smaller scale unit so I can actually use it in the car. Passive house, Adroit, we do entry level, medium level, and even a kitchen hood unit. These also have control back through the cloud. So if there was something wrong with the unit, we can see it. We can go and identify it, reprogram it if necessary from base, or identify what the fault is and then send the engineer out with the correct part to solve the problem as quickly in a first fix scenario. To make it easier to fit, not de-skilling, but just making it easier by using coiled ducting rather than actually having joint every 3 meters. This gets away from problems that people have had in the past with ventilation systems hissing, energy systems, MVHR systems, where the MVHR unit is having to work far too hard simply because of the leaks in the system. You can literally take it as a coil from the MVHR unit down to the actual room in one piece, or at least 50 meters anyway. But the problem with MVHR, when you start thinking retrofit, is the ducting. And it's a big problem. It means ripping out ceilings, lifting floors to retrofit. So, very quickly we developed UnoHab. This is a whole house compliant system. It conforms with Part F of the building regs, Part O of the building regs, and Part L of the building regs. Again, it works in a similar way to a single room heat recovery unit. It's very quiet in operation. I mean, 14 decibels is very, very quiet. And it's A+ rated energy-wise. And 1.6 watts is all it uses. But the basic operating modes, to give it its compliance, you've got standard heat recovery mode at the bottom, cross ventilation for when it's summer and you want to create a breeze. A bedroom under Part O can't get above 23 degrees centigrade. So this is a device where it creates a flow of air across the property when it detects the air inside is warmer than the air outside. Also, because of the way it works in supply mode, it coordinates with the extractor fans which you use in the wet rooms to get rid of the boost, to get rid of the moisture that's being generated whilst one's showering, and then automatically reverts back to heat recovery once that showering's finished. So hence it is compliant. So thank you very much. I've tried to whip through it as quickly as I possibly could. I don't know how I am on time. Oh gosh. I've overgone, but I'll pass you back to Jeff.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephen. I should say as well, if people have specific questions for the sponsors, the thing to do is to grab them, collar them at their stands. Yeah, thank you very much. The golden thread that you mentioned, and it's fascinating. That kind of level of transparency, I think, is something that's been missing from construction, and it's fantastic to see it.
So,
are you using that as an opportunity? Are you trying to use that as an opportunity to see ways, to see if it's possible to drive, ways to reduce resource use? Or
absolutely, we're using it to go through the whole of our business. We're going from top to bottom, using the golden thread. It is something that's come about because of Grenfell. It will be in legislation in the building safety regulations here in the UK in the not too distant future. Because of Alan's connections with government, we get the insight into what's going on, and we will be able to trace everything through the line. Thus, we'll be able to reduce costs, reduce carbon from distance. Is it better to get it from A than B? And as I say, it helps us draw things in locally to produce locally in the market. As we don't use the Far East, we're using Europe simply because that's where it's best at, and it's where the market is. Finland, as you can possibly imagine, is a massive market for MVHR. That's why they are the experts at it. It's where we sell our most. Therefore, it makes sense to make it into that particular market.
Do you think through focusing more on performance, and I mean, you are obviously manufacturing in some higher wage economies too. It's easy to get sucked into a race to the bottom, the kind of commodity approach, and presumably that's not a very sustainable way to run a business. I don't know whether where you're thinking instead about other ways of justifying price, for instance.
Well, one of the ways we justify price is by working in partnership with the big customers. I'm doing an awful lot of work at the moment with 2 or 3 of the national house builders, where we're all but developing bespoke product to solve solution to problems they have. So, situation of where do we put an MVHR unit in a 3-bed semi-detached house that's a new build, because quite frankly they're rabbit touchers. So what we're using is putting the MVHR unit in a wasted space which is above the hob, where an extractor fan sits. We can integrate an extractor fan into the MVHR unit, so the heat from the cooking can actually be also saved and recycled into the property. So it works both ways, but then when it comes to the negotiations, I was working with them, one of them only on Monday, and this fleeting comment to me said, "Stephen, of course you realise this is just about price. It'll be price, price, price." From their perspective, 10,000 houses a year, if we're a couple of £100 more expensive than our competitor, do the maths. It's £2 million off their bottom line.
Does that cloud-based approach that you're taking make a difference, or does it help you to justify? Because I mean, and what chance do you have with the house builder to be able to convince them to not try and save every penny everywhere they can?
Well, with the cloud-based unit, it actually has quite strong appeal to local authorities, because they like to be able to monitor their houses, so that they can actually see, because there's a CO2 monitor and a humidity monitor within the unit, they can actually see the levels within the property. They can see when somebody's turned it on or turned it off. So if they do find they get problems with damp or problems in that particular property, they can actually look at the file and look at the record to say, "Oh, yeah, but you turned the thing off 3 weeks ago. No wonder you've got damp and mould."
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Stephen. Thanks.
No problem at all. Thank you.
Okay.